I'm going to show you the demand curve here. Just always remember that demand curve actually slopes downwards from left to right. So it's a left to right downward sloping curve. Yeah. In real life, demand curves are not straight, definitely. Just to make the whole thing easy, and like just to make the drawing easy, sketch easy, and make it appear easier, we do show it like that. So basically, this is a demand curve. Yeah, it is left to right. It's a downward sloping curve. Yeah, so let's name it D. Yeah. So apart from this, if there is an increase in demand, what happens if there is an increase in demand? As you have already seen the slides earlier, and you know these slides already, an increase in demand, we call it to be, when demand increases, we call it to be an outward shift. Yeah, the demand curve, when increases, shifts to the right side of its position. Yeah, so from D1 to D2. When it increases, the demand curve shifts to the right side of its position. So if you consider when the price was 6 a day, maybe it was the demand curve was somewhere near 58, 56, something like that, right? But when if the price was 8, it would actually decrease. So an increase in demand is likely to increase the price. Yeah. On the other hand, remember, if there is a decrease in demand, if the demand falls, it's likely to have an inward shift, or shift the we are going to shift the whole demand to the left side. So if there is an increase in demand, the demand curve is likely to shift to the right. It's going to have an outward shift. And if there's a fall in demand, the demand curve is likely to shift left from D to D3. Yeah? Okay. Now, let's talk about a supply curve. As I've told you that demand curve is left to right downward sloping. The supply curve, yeah, slopes upward from left to right. Yeah. So, or else you could say it that it's a right to left downward sloping curve again. So it's basically upward. We count it to be. Yeah. Here was a demand curve. This was a demand curve. And now, left to right, upward sloping is the supply curve here. So this is the supply curve. If there is an increase in supply, if the supply increases, yeah, or remember one easy trick, both supply and demand, if increases, shifts to their right. To their right means from its own position to the right. And if it decreases, it shifts to the left, yeah, from its own position. Supply from its position and demand from its position, right? So if there is an increase in supply, yeah, if the supply increases, there's going to be an outward shift, shifting here. Is it right? From S to S1. Excuse me for a minute. And if there's a fall in supply, for example, if there was an increase in cost and the supply fell due to an increase in cost, if there was something as such, then the supply curve would shift to the left. Yeah. So if the cost rise, the whole supply curve will shift to the left from S to S2. Yeah. So as you can see, when the price was, if they were keeping the price constant at P, yeah, keeping the price constant at P, I can have 3 individual quantities over here, right? For S1, S, and S2. Right, maybe the increase in cost, or there have been something as such like that, changes in the price of the product, or things like that, right? I mean, the cost of the product, not the price. So that can happen with supply. So basically, remember that when supply increases, supply curve moves to its right. There is an outward shift from S to S1. When it decreases, there's a inward shift, or it shifts to the left side from S to S2. Yeah. And then let's come to the point of demand and supply, the market equilibrium. Okay. So market equilibrium is where the demand intersects the supply, as you know. This is the exact place where the demand intersects the supply. We have already seen all the, we have seen the diagrams already. I mean, on the slides already. Yeah. So sorry, I'm a very bad artist. I mean, like I can draw things properly. So actually, this is the place where the D, S is intersecting. This is where we call it to be a market equilibrium. Yeah. So this is the exact place where we call it to be we call it to be a market equilibrium. So let's name it for a while. Like let's name it X. Yeah. So X is the point where we are counting the market equilibrium, creating P and Q. What if there was an increase in demand? Yeah. What if there's an increase in demand, or maybe a decrease in demand, or say like an increase in supply or decrease in supply? Now let's assume there's an increase in demand. If there's an increase in demand, and as the new D1 curve intersects the existing supply at a new point, which is, I assume, is this one here, is intersecting at a new point over here. Yeah, the blue curve intersecting the existing black S curve at a new point. At this point, we are going to have the new curve. Yeah, we're going to have the new intersecting point, new equilibrium point, because this is where the existing demand is intersecting the existing supply. So there is likely to be a new equilibrium point, which means our price and quantity demand both is likely to change. And as we have a new curve, yeah, you see, like, so it's going to be maybe like we are having a new equilibrium point, which is Y. Let's name it Y. So at Y is the new equilibrium point. There is more demand than product supply in the market. Definitely, the price is likely to increase, right? Excuse me for a minute. So definitely, the price is likely to increase due to an excess demand in the market. What if there was like an increase in supply or decrease in supply? Keeping the demand constant, if there was a decrease in supply, yeah, if the S curve if the black S curve shifted to its left as a decrease in supply to S1, again, the new S1 curve would be intersecting the existing demand curve at a new point. Yeah. So like maybe at this point. At this point. So this is likely to be your new market equilibrium price. This is going to be the new market equilibrium point. And if there was a change in both demand and both supply, if there was a change in supply as well as a change in demand, then at the same time changes in both demand and supply, then the new market equilibrium price would be exactly here. I'm not here, I'm showing you where it's going to be. Exactly here, where the blue S1 curve is intersecting the new D1 curve. Yeah, where both blue curves are intersecting, the S1 and D1, this is going to be the new equilibrium point, creating a whole new price and quantity section. Yeah. So this is going to be the place where the new demand and new supply are intersecting. That's what we are going to count as an equilibrium. Yeah. Okay. Now let's come to the point of disequilibrium in the market. Remember, disequilibrium means if there is an excess, like demand or excess supply. So, for an example, if you count it to be like this, yeah, this point, and if you count this point, Okay, so if you think of these points, yeah, from S to the D on the top, as you can see, yeah, this is likely to be your excess supply. This is the excess supply. So, and this one here is what we call to be the excess demand. So excess demand and excess supply. Excess demand, as I've told you, is the position where demand is greater than the supply, existing supply at a given price, and there is a shortage in the market, right? And excess supply is the position where supply is greater than the demand at a given price, and there are unsold goods, right? So that's how actually it deals with, like, that's how it goes on. Yeah. So do you have any question as such? If you have any question, please write it down. Let me know. Just remember, when you are drawing supply and demand curves, you need to remember that demand curves always slope down from left to right, and supply curves slope up from left to right, unless the supply is fixed. You also need to remember to label all the excess correctly. Marks may be awarded in the examination for labeling them properly, yeah, and definitely it's normally a 4 marks question for like construct a diagram and things like that, yeah. So you just need to remember that. Okay, finally we are going to have a little more discussion on fixed supply. What is a fixed supply? Remember, a fixed supply curve looks like this. A fixed supply curve looks like this. So this is a fixed supply curve. Yeah. So if you consider this to be your fixed supply, at any point where the demand intersects, fixed supply can be for, say, like if you're assuming the seat of the planes, the seat of stadium, yeah, if you consider all this, these capacities are likely to be fixed. Yeah. So if the demand, if the supply is fixed, right, then the price will be determined based on only demand, because you cannot change the supply, can you? So at D and S, where the D and S is going to intersect, the price is going to be something like this. And it may change if demand increased from D to D1. There might be a change in demand. If the demand is increasing from D1 to the red demand curve, new demand curve, then the price might change. Yeah. So remember, fixed supplies actually work in different circumstances. For example, in some circumstances, the supply of a product or service may be fixed. If this is the case, the supply curve will be vertical. Supply will be fixed if it is impossible for sellers to increase the supply even when price rises. For example, the supply at venues such as cinemas, theaters, or sports stadiums may be fixed. Yeah. For example, if you think of a stadium, and if it's currently holding, say, like 90,000 spectators, if it's having the capacity of 90,000 spectators, even if the price of the tickets are increased, so like if Barcelona is playing, or so like Manchester United is playing, Even if you're increasing the price from £30 to £100, and if there are no seats, there's no seat, it's not possible to include more seats. Yeah. However, there are plans to increase the capacity in the future, but that means you're changing the whole capacity for a long period of time again. So that's going to keep the supply fixed again for a long period of time. So supply is not likely to change just as the demand goes up, not immediately. Yeah. So that's where the supply is actually fixed. So I hope this instruction session helped you so far. Yeah. And let me know if you have any problem. Please write it down if you have any problem. Thank you for this session.